Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons' brand new competitor in the tabletop role-playing game space, the U.S. government. What? You couldn't make this stuff up, folks. It is so bizarre. So first of all, a big thank you to one of my commenters. The other day, I did a short on Dungeons and Drakenheim, and somebody who said, "Who asked you?" And I'm like, I don't think you know how commentary works. I come on, and if it has anything to do with Dungeons and Dragons, I commentate on it, right? And nobody needs to ask me about Dungeons and Dragons, but I was very blessed. So one of my commenters came on and said, "Hey Scott, what do you think of the new NASA role-playing game?" Right? And so I want to say thank you to each and every one of you out there who ever comments on a video, ever likes the video, ever shares a video. But this one was a really good comment because, one, I didn't know about it, right? And so I learned from my own comment section, probably a few hours before I might have seen it, or maybe even a day before I might have seen it on my own. So I really want to thank you guys. So thank you very much to that commenter, and thank you to each and every one of you who engages. By the way, if you don't know, your comments are literally my pay. I've never made a single dollar on this channel. Right? I'm very proud of that. If you can't tell, I'm an independent voice. Right? I always find it funny when people are like, "You're shilling." I'm like, I've never gotten anything from anyone. Right? I've never gotten a dollar for this. I've never been given product. I am truly an independent voice, and I'm very proud of that. And my stuff is so unique. It literally could not fit any sponsor. There's no possibility, right? Because my stuff is so unique. So I just want to say thank you. All right, let's talk about this. All right. So every other channel will tell you NASA made a tabletop role-playing game. No, that is not what happened, okay? That is the worst reading on what has actually occurred, okay? Guess what? NASA isn't like Evil Hat Games, right? NASA is a department of the US government, right? It is just a department of the US government. So the real understanding of what has happened is NASA published a tabletop role-playing game, okay? The better understanding of it is the US government has gone into direct competition with Hasbro D&D, right? Literally gone into direct competition with Hasbro Dungeons and Dragons, and is now in competition, trying to win the market from Dungeons and Dragons, which is really, and you're like, wait, Scott, I don't know if they're trying to compete with. They could have partnered with them. Dungeons and Dragons has a partnered content section now. I have a whole bunch of videos on it. NASA could have partnered with Hasbro D&D and made peace with them, but instead they're like, "Oh, we coming for you, Hasbro. We're coming for the market. We want to control the tabletop role-playing game market." So the U.S. government is going into direct competition with the number one tabletop role-playing game provider in the world. That's what's really happened, right? It doesn't matter that NASA, it's the U.S. government. Your tax dollars were spent on this, okay? Do you understand that? Right? Your tax dollars were spent to make a tabletop role-playing game. And of course, my fur is up because they did it wrong, right? They have gone into direct competition with Dungeons and Dragons, right? Dungeons and Dragons is not mentioned anywhere in the product, right? And the reality is, it is published by NASA, but that doesn't matter. This is the first time any branch of the U.S. government has ever published a tabletop role-playing game, right? So we are in a new day. This is wild. In February 2024, the U.S. government was not in direct competition with the greatest role-playing game in the world. In March 2024, NASA decided that they would put a product in direct competition with a capital product, Dungeons and Dragons, and not a small one, like a global American product, right? This is very, very bad in my humble opinion. All right, so first of all, I don't like this, right? Because the reality is, first of all, it does not matter to me at all that NASA did this. And the reason why is they represent the US government, right? They do things that it is literally not legal for any other corporation to do without massive communication with the government, filling out a million forms, and quite frankly, like probably paying a bunch of taxes to the government to do, right? Like they control, like this is the US government. Make no mistake. This is not like NASA is not independent. NASA is not, you know, like it is taxpayer funded. This NASA's tabletop role-playing game, The Lost Universe, which I downloaded and viewed, is directly created by the US government. That is huge. That is a really big, and nobody, and again, of course, right, like you're on Scott Garibay channel, this is why you're here. I'll say something that you're going to hear from me what nobody else is discussing, right? This is not NASA making a little cute little product. This is the US government going into direct competition with Dungeons & Dragons. And I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm a capitalist. I'm not a communist, right? I don't like the US government undercutting Hasbro D&D's price model, right? They released this for free, right? For free. That is galling. That is galling, right? Because they're trying to undercut Dungeons & Dragons market share, right? And so NASA is trying to be the #1 provider of tabletop role-playing games in the world, right? That is outrageous. That is absolutely outrageous, right? I feel like it's none of their business. It's literally not their business. It's literally not their business, right? And so here's my issue, okay? First of all, I'm not opposed to the US government getting into the tabletop role-playing scene, right? The sphere, the tabletop role-playing sphere, right? I actually don't believe there is a tabletop role-playing game industry. I think there is the Dungeons & Dragons industry, right? And I think there's the OSR activity sphere and the indie activity sphere. I actually don't think there's any money to be made in OSR or indie. I think the vast majority of OSR and indie games are highly unprofitable, right? And in those entire activity spheres, I don't even think there's enough to pay like the benefits for the people that work in it. And most of the people, I'm not sure they even make minimum wage. It is not. To call the OSR, I don't think it's fair to call it. I don't believe there is an OSR industry. I don't believe there is an indie TTRPG industry, but there is a Dungeons & Dragons industry. That industry is real. It's at scale. It's a legamomon. It has legacy and momentum, right? So I am extremely upset that that the U.S. government has undercut Hasbro's D&D's price model, right? They're like, oh, tabletop role-playing games should be free, right? How would, like, okay, Burlington Coat Factory, right? Like, they buy a whole bunch of coats and they distribute them. How would they feel if the U.S. government began making coats and giving them away for nothing? That's like, and this is the issue, right? I love tabletop role-playing. Actually, I don't love tabletop role-playing games. I love the best tabletop role-playing experience in the world, which is Dungeons & Dragons, right? I actually don't like tabletop role-playing games. I like the premier tabletop role-playing game experience. I like the tabletop role-playing experience, which is Dungeons & Dragons, right? Which Ben from Questing Beast just today had an entire video labeled D&D is not a game. I love it. I loved it. I love that video. Boy, did I love that video, right? Like, yeah, okay. So I'm not the only one who's, has a video saying D&D is not a game, anymore, right? So really fascinating, really fascinating. Okay, check this out, right? So I am really distressed, and so I don't think I would be opposed to the U.S. government getting on board with tabletop role-playing experiences if they had done it right? And the way to do it right you would go to the market winner right? The one that's too big to fail. And you would say, hey, we're NASA. We're really good at space. We would love to bless you as a capital. The U.S. government prints money and hands it to banks, right? They don't just give it straight to the people, right? Like that's not how it works, right? And so the right way to have done this would be for the U.S. government, for somebody in NASA to say, hey, I would really like to make a tabletop role-playing experience. And then the manager should have been like, yeah, that's great, no problem. Call up Renton, get on the horn with Jeremy Crawford. Let's get this done, right? We're going to do partnered content with Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to bless a good, freestanding, American, capitalist, commercial venture. And we're going to help them. We're not going to undercut them and make it harder for them to sell their adventures, right? By making one and giving it away for free, right? Like, I don't know if they got the message, but we're not a communist nation. This is not Vladimir Putin's, hammer and sickle land, right? This is America, right? And so this was a outrageously communist, horrible capitalist undercut from the U.S. government to a freestanding market. Like, this was a very, very, very bad idea, right? I'm not actually opposed to what they created. I'm opposed to how they distributed it and what they set as the pricing model, and the fact that they didn't even call, Dungeons & Dragons and do it right? Like, it's galling from 15 different levels, right? I'm extremely upset with NASA for creating a $0 D&D killer, right? Like, they should have never done this, right? Or an attempt at a D&D killer, right? And that's the other thing, is they're picking winners in the market, right? So they could have chose Dungeons & Dragons. They could have chose the OSR. They don't even know what the OSR is, but they chose the indie space. They chose the indie space as a market winner. That is market manipulation, in my humble opinion. And in my humble opinion, the U.S. government is engaged in market manipulation against Hasbro. And that is appalling, and that is wrong. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Barely matters. What really matters is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.